Hello there, my name is Matthew Palmer and welcome to the studio, and let me introduce to you my brand new brushes, the Matthew Palmer Sky and Cloud brushes. Now these brushes are a set of two. We have a small and a large, and the unique shape of the brush is the perfect shape for large washes and for painting beautiful clouds. The brushes really allow you to capture movement, and the unique shape can be laid at different positions on your paper to create some beautiful clouds. And with it being a imitation sable hair, these are the perfect brushes for lifting out highlights and creating stunning, beautiful watercolor clouds. Let's get stuck in and see what we can produce on this sheet of watercolor paper. Now what I've got here is a 1/4 imperial sheet of paper stuck down with masking tape, ready to go, all ready to go. And we're basically just going to start off by using water, using the large brush. Beautiful brushes for big washers. This kind of replaces my large size 20 brush here. It's got this beautiful slope to it, which really allows ease of use. Now all I'm doing is just laying down water here. I want to paint a vibrant, beautiful watercolor sky, so nicely covered. Now my advice to you, it depends what paper you're using, but my advice to you would be to wet it at least twice, if not 3 times, because on a paper like this, a premium cotton paper, it can really take the water, and the more water you've got in there, the more effective the skies will actually be. So pretty much all skies would start off the same for me. They would all start off with this nice wet background. We've got a wet sheet of paper, let's prep some colours. So straight in here, straight in with the brush, and I want to go for a sunset here. So I want to start off with some yellow. So we'll put some yellow on the brush here. Beautiful. So that is natural yellow light. And we're literally just going to go straight in on this. And please don't be afraid. I mean, look at the width of the brush stroke instantly. It just goes on beautiful straight away. A light yellow. You could use cadmium yellow here. Because of the shape of the brush, it's got a beautiful point which allows detail, which we'll get to. You can use it on the side to make it wider, you can use it vertical to make it pointy. Very versatile, and this is the brush I've been waiting for such a long time. Don't be afraid to use the yellow quite strong. Now because I'm going to move into different colours, I'm going to move into oranges here. I don't need to worry about cleaning my brush, so I'll go straight into natural orange here, or any kind of orange mix. And then we'll go straight in here. Now we'll work just above, sweeping those colours, using the brush on the side, working down. Beautiful way of working. The bristle in this is an imitation sable. It's the finest imitation hair you're going to get, folks. It is a premium bristle, it really is, and it's such an elegant, oh, it's just so nice to have a large brush with a point if we need it. You can see the beautiful point of the brush right at the top. Let's get some darkness at the top of this cloud there, the sky. So we'll clean the brush here. I'm just wiping it in the water pot. We're going to take some natural violet. I love natural violet, a beautiful colour. It looks quite blue when you see it in the palette, but when we apply it to the paper, you will see that it is a violet. And when it dries, it changes when it dries, but just look how effortless it is to do a graduated wash sky. Now, there's one particular technique I've been teaching for many years, and that is a technique of capturing those fluffy clouds. These clouds have become known as Matthew Palmer clouds, and people are always emailing me and sending images. Oh, look at this photograph of the sky, it's a Matthew Palmer cloud. So, but people do find it difficult to do. This brush is the perfect shape for doing those. This angled bristle allows the brush to stay in shape. You can pinch it, you can make it go flat. You can really experiment with this, but in its rawest form, if I take some, let's take some orange. Let's take some orange. I'll pop that on. We'll take some grey. So we've got two colours on the brush, and you can probably just about see the two colours on there. Now the brush, if held vertically down to the paper and pressed, it is just super and the perfect tool for getting perfect shapes to these Palmer clouds. Now because I've got different colours on the brush, I can play around with it. I can get more on one side. It's just a brush that just makes this process so easy. Think about this brush to be your everyday brush. It's your everyday brush for working, and it's going to work lovely. It's going to work very nice for this effect. You can play around with the shape. You can have the brush upside down. You can use that super point for getting that natural roll, and because it's such a soft bristle, it really works well for watercolours. Now you can see I'm now holding the brush almost horizontally to create this beautiful effect. All this will get softened in before we finish the painting. I'm just going to grab some more grey here. Natural grey I'm using. You can mix your own colours, of course. Let's go a little bit stronger up here, flat to the paper, and twist. Look at the beautiful sky and those dramatic clouds that we all enjoy seeing, but can be quite difficult to paint. So we've got a few clouds. Let's work these in. Let's make them look that little bit more realistic. Let's put some light in, and let's put some wonderful blending effects. We'll clean the brush. We'll clean the brush really well. I've got some kitchen paper here. I want to wipe it and give it a bit of a squeeze. Now when I squeeze the brush flat, you can see how the brush goes in this beautiful curve. Now we can use that like a razor blade. We can razor blade this down. We can drag the base of clouds. You can create such stunning, look at the beautiful highlights. Look how simple. This is why we've got this beautiful curved shape for doing these beautiful highlights. It's probably the best brush for absorbing moist paint on the market. It really does work, an absolute treat, folks. And all you do is you squeeze it. Now, if you're doing this and it's looking a little bit harsh, just ever so gently use that curved edge to blend it upwards. It is a wonderful tool for blending. Even if your paint is a bit dry, keep cleaning it, keep squeezing it through your fingers and give it a nice soften. So I'm basically putting highlights into my sky with this nice razor edge. Imagine the sun's gone down. You can kind of see the sun here. Now that was basically a water drop that fell off my fingers. But I could have used a coin wrapped in tissue to create that effect. But look how that transforms the sky. If you need to blend them away at the end, then you can do. Now this is just using the large brush. There is a small one as well. If you've got any hard edges in your clouds, clean the brush so it's damp, and just like you can see here, just gently tickle the edge so it creates a bit of a softness on the cloud edge. Drama is what we're talking about with this particular one. I can just like to take away some light. Great for any highlight effects. Now if you want to get some highlights in the clouds coming down from the edge, you can do that as well, just by using that similar effect, tapping the bristle against the paper. So it's basically a large wash brush, but I've called it a sky and cloud brush because for me that is the most obvious reason why we've got that nice edge, but also it gives us a beautiful point, you see, and that's quite nice for doing detail. So this will be my go-to brush now for skies, for large washes, for rivers, for streams. It's not just for painting skies, of course, but it turns into a blending brush just by squeezing it through your fingers. That's being the advantage. So that's all nice and dry now. What I want to do next is introduce some landscape elements to this. Again, I'll use the same brush. I'm going to take some of the grey again. Quite a pale grey here. Load the brush up. Again, it's not just about painting skies with this brush. I want to paint in some distant mountains, and because it's got such a beautiful point on the brush, you can really play around with beautiful effects. Mountains are great. Mountains, hills, fells. Then we can blend it down. Again, it's got built-in blending properties, the brush, just by simply cleaning it, giving it a bit of a squeeze through your fingers so it turns into a blending blade, and then you can simply go forward, back, forward, back. It's an all-in-one tool, this. And look how, using that curve, look how simple it is to blend away. Now I can go back to the edge as much as I like and add a bit more detail. If I squeeze the brush through the fingers like I did with the clouds, I can add the easiest. I mean, let's just look how nice it is. It's such a it's a pleasure to use, folks. It really is. And I can create separation while the paint is still damp, while the brush is damp. If it starts to run out of energy, the brush, just refresh it with a bit of water. But you can really experiment with beautiful, almost misty mountains. We'll give that a quick dry and then we'll come back to it and paint in another layer in front of that. Just means using a slightly darker version of the same colour. We'll introduce some other colours into this one because we are going to work a little bit closer here. So we've got the grey, and then we can just add another layer on this. Now I can probably paint over one of these first ones here because it's stronger. Again, I can really get detail out of that brush because it's got such a beautiful point to it. So you can almost start to create the illusion of pine trees, a distant forest on the horizon. But remember, this is all done with the one brush, so we're just using the large brush. There is a small one as well to use, so you can bring that into play. The secret's in the shape and the bristle that we've used. Now, what I want to do here with the brush is I want to introduce some green. Now, I've got some natural green light. If you've not got this, you can mix just a bright green that's more towards a yellow. Now, if I was to mix, again, we've got the blending properties of the brush. If I was to mix the light green coming down from the grey, you can clearly see how it all starts to... Look at that. The grey's got a lot of blue in it, so it just mixes beautifully and it starts to bring this picture towards us. Marvellous. If it doesn't blend too well, as we've mentioned a few times, clean it, squeeze. I'll just move it to one side, squeeze it through your fingers so the brush goes flat. You can really play around with the shape of the brush. You can make it as wide as you like. And it's that property that makes this brush quite special. You can really absorb paint with it without too much effort. So from this point on, any large wash that I apply to my painting will be with these brushes, because it's got that built-in blending blade. Nice, eh? We can bring some of the grey down so it all nicely mixes together. Beautiful, really nice. You've got instant depth. You've got that massive distance. You can travel through that picture. You can be flying in the sky like an eagle. That sounds like an ABBA song. And you can be flying through into that beautiful distance there. But what I'd like to do just to finish off is use the smaller brush and paint in some foreground trees and show you how this brush also works great for trees. Okay, so let's use natural green. This is the darker of the two greens. I want to mix it with a bit of grey as well. And what I want to do is paint a line of trees across here. The smaller brush in hand, it's exactly the same shape, just a smaller version. It's got the same blade edge to it, which means we can lay the brush flat and spread. We can spread, we can twist. We can twist, pick the paint up, we can twist along here. It just makes it easy. The shape is designed for this. We'll go along here. We'll stipple on this a little bit later as well. So if you're in the mood for a quick, simple watercolour painting, this is a great one to do. Love that. Absolutely beautiful. Now, we mentioned the fact that you can make the brush go flat. If you lay the brush flat in the palette and bend it a little bit, you get almost like a razor edge, which is wonderful, which is brilliant for painting in pine trees, distant pine trees. And as you know, you've seen me paint a few times, quite a fan of the old pine trees. So we can make use of these by painting in these clean edges. I'll do a couple here. And then the brush has got a point on it, so we can just nicely flick out. It's almost as pointy, in fact it's just as pointy as my standard number 6 brush. So using the small sky and cloud brush, we're sort of replacing the need for lots and lots of brushes here. Beautiful. And again, I can just give it a bit of a pinch flat with my fingers. Get the line. And flick out those pointy edges. Same here. It's good to rotate the board from time to time while you do this. Beautiful. Effective, gives more scale. Now you can actually, because it's quite a robust bristle, you can also, this makes more colour, give it a bit of a stipple and the brush will go spiky. We can see that the brush has got a beautiful spiky edge here. Now we can make use of that spiky edge. Because of the shape, because of the stiffness, because of that imitation sable. Pure sable is very soft and you wouldn't stipple that at all. But this, it's robust, it's designed for rigidness. It wants to be, you know, abused in that way, and that's what you want to do with the brush, as daft as it seems. And we can basically add, look at that. So we're now stippling in the tops of trees, giving it a bit more shape if we feel the need to. I mean, it's not essential by any means, but if you want to bring in a little bit extra detail around here, look how nice that, if you compare that to here, we don't have to do it all over. We can sort of decide and just mix in more colour, giving it the stipple again. This is the small one. The large one will also do the same as well. But I feel we can just add a bit of height to these trees in various places. Like so. Yeah, and if I just tilt it so the spotlights, the studio lights aren't catching it, you can see how effective that actually is. It's amazing every time I use these brushes, because obviously these brushes are quite new. I've been designing them for almost 2 years, these brushes, working on various samples and shapes and designs and different hairs, different bristles. But this particular one, it just stood out straight away. And it's a new brush to me, so every time I use it I'm thinking, oh, well, that works. And that's basically how I work with brushes. I just learn the techniques as I progress through the painting. And beautiful. Nice, simple, pleasing watercolour picture. Again, laying the brush flat in the palette, giving it a bit of a bend. Tilt it. The brush goes into this beautiful razor edge. It's almost like a blade edge, because I just want to get a little bit of extra, pop a few little extra impressions of tall trees. I'm literally just catching the paper here as I do this, making sure the tops of those trees are nice and pointy. It's a lovely effect. And of course, if you do want to make any larger trees, you've got that option as well. What a beautiful watercolor. Contrast, beautiful atmospherics, all created with these wonderful Matthew Palmer sky and cloud brushes. Look at the depth you've created. Wonderful. Now let's move on and paint something different. Let's go a bit later in the day. Let's go for a nighttime atmospheric sky. Let's get started. I'm going to wet the paper using the large brush. As always, every painting I ever do starts off with a wetting to wet background. If it's a sky, even if it's like a vignette or something, I always put a nice background wash on. Such a pleasure to use the brush, folks. A brush that will last you many years. It's a very robust bristle and a pleasure to work with. Three coats of water is what I'm looking at here. That's about right. Working on a 1/4 imperial size sheet of paper here, so quite a large piece of paper, 11 by 15 inch roughly. It's a not surface paper. I'm going to start off by popping in some skin tone light. This is like a nice kind of terracotta colour here, and we're going to get some big coverage. We're going to lay the brush flat in the palette. We're going to bend it a little bit so it makes the brush nice and wide, flat to the paper. And look at that instant clouds. I mean, come on, beautiful. Working with the writing facing the top. Light skin tone goes in. Now you're thinking this is not very night time, bear with us. Anticipation is half the fun. That's beautiful. Lovely colours. And then we'll just sort of waft it across the bottom. Look, so I'm using the brush again, the writing, just wafting it in. Straight back to the palette. Clean the brush at this point. Don't really need to. Kitchen paper is always good, just to have in your hand. But we're going to use some natural violet, or any kind of violet at this point. Beautiful natural violet coming into play now. There we go. So it's a little bit darker. Did you notice the wipe on the side? Again, working flat with the writing on the side of the brush. Work it in. It's good to leave a little bit of light. It's the perfect brush for doing the Matthew Palmer twist. That's what I'm going to say to you, folks, and that's what people struggle with. You know, it's such a lovely effect, but people do have problems capturing the Matthew Palmer twist. But here you go, you've got a brush that does it instantly. Just going to basically clean the brush at that point, give it a bit of a pinch through some kitchen paper, and then just smooth out any hard lines at the bottom. And now we go much darker. This is where it all starts to get more nighttime. But just before we do that, let's grab a round coin wrapped in some tissue, and let's pop in a moon. Let's pop in a moon, probably, I reckon, just about there. Beautiful. That's just an old English pound coin from 1988. Made a good sound. Made a good sound. So, Darkness. Darkness Falls. Good film. Bring it in. Still, the brush is flat to the paper. We can bring it over the top of the moon carefully. Nice. Love it. Then bring it over here. We've got drama. We like a bit of drama, don't we, in his lives? Bring a bit up here as well. Bit of drama in that corner. Love it. Bit more grey. Don't be afraid, of course, to use grey if you're doing a nighttime scene. Now, if we change the way the brush actually picks the paint up, sort of do it like this. So the brush has got this almost this pointy edge to it. Okay, now that's great for doing the classic Palmer cloud. The classic Palmer cloud. Everybody struggles to do skies. Well, here you go, folks. You've got the tools for the job. Love these colours, the violet. Bit of a dramatic sky, like it, folks. I'm going to be a little bit darker over here. I'm then going to clean the brush really well. Got the kitchen paper here. It's the same piece that had the coin in. I want to pinch it and give the brush a bit of a flatten. I can then go in with this damp brush. Look at this beautiful area just there. We can go in, we can drag, we can smooth. If you've got any bits that you're not happy with, like here for example, we can just go in and give it a bit of a tickle. And it softens, it blends in. It's very effective. And if I squeeze the brush really flat, make sure it's damp at this point, the brush becomes into a blending mode. This edge is the blending edge. So we can actually add some highlights. Highlights captured on the edge of the clouds from the moon. So imagine the moon is catching those edges. Beautiful way of working. Of course, if you want to get more detailed with this, you can change brushes. You can go for the smaller brush, which is just more of a concentrated edge for doing this. Same process, clean it through the tissue, through your fingers, and again, you've got that nice edge, and you can just, it comes off really well, while it's damp, that is, of course. Now, don't worry too much if your painting's too dry, because I know that's going to happen, but I've got a way to show you how to put some white in on the next painting in this tutorial. So stick with us. You can just lightly smooth it out. Look, because of the nature of this soft sable bristle, this is the nicest bristle we've had in any of my brushes. It's designed to replicate that very, very, very expensive and getting more expensive by the day sable. I mean, sable hair is actually more expensive weight-wise than gold, and it's getting harder and harder to come by. these are 100% synthetic, but it's the best synthetic hair you'll ever get. It's an imitation sable, but look how beautiful that's created. It's put layers within the clouds. You might notice a bit of a hard edge where the cloud overlaps the moon because the paper was dry there, of course. Just a little bit of a tickle with the brush, and that soon rectifies that. Beautiful. Now, if you've got any areas like this that aren't quite blending too well, just use a bit of water. Use the blending edge and soften it away. Work it into the picture. Bit of tissue helps just to calm it down. But it's quite easy just to go back in and reactivate at any time. But that's giving us a beautiful moonlit sky. Piece of masking tape. Remove stickiness by rubbing your hands over it a few times. I'm going to pop this across the base of the picture, probably about there. So it's just below the sky, really. It doesn't matter exactly where it is. I'm going to press that down nice here. And then using the large brush, we're going to use some of the grey on the brush. But before I apply this to the picture, give it a bit of a tap, because I don't want a huge amount of paint on the brush. I want to go along that edge with the grey. Now, if that's a bit pale, just get a bit more colour. Always give it a tap, because otherwise it can seep down the back of this tape, and we don't want to do that really, if we can help it. Then what we'll do is we'll just drop the brush into some natural turquoise at this point. Continue that across. Love that colour, great for seascapes. So just applying a graduated wash, going from the turquoise into the grey. And then I want to pick up the small brush, make the grey a little bit deeper on the tissue, just to make sure we've got a few sort of darker areas. And then we can dry this off. So you can see, so basically I'm just working along here, adding the grey. Just putting a few lines in basically. I'm going to dry that off, but as I dry it off, I'm going to use a hairdryer to heat up the side of the tape, because that will stop it ripping. My hairdryer's over here, so I'll do that and I'll be back shortly. Now, either using the same piece of tape or a new piece. Again, stickiness removal. This is just going to go slightly below that edge, so any little bits of seepage that might be there can be lost in the picture. Okay, now bit of seepage, fine. Take another piece of masking tape and then remove the stickiness from this as well. Make sure it's nice and dry, and then we'll pop that just below that edge using the small, perfect, press it down. Using the small brush at this point, and natural grey, quite strong, quite heavy with the grey. Again, that little bit of a tap on some kitchen paper would be quite useful. We're going to paint in some distant mountains and various other things. I'm thinking, at the back of my mind, I'm thinking of a place in North Wales that I go to and have spent many a year. It's actually the place I really learnt how to paint, if I'm honest, and where my love of landscapes and mountains came from. A place called Harlech, part of the Snowdonian, well, very close to the Snowdonian National Park. You can actually see Snowdon, so we'll paint Snowdon there, albeit not accurate, but accurate enough for us. Snowdon, of course, being the largest mountain in England. Bring that over. And right in the distance, you actually get Harlech Castle, which we can use these nice properties of this brush to paint a distant castle. You can bring it across. If you have a quick look online for Harlech Castle, you'll see it's a very traditional, got sort of 4 towers. There you go. There's the castle. I went in easy enough. And then there's a few trees and things around the background here. Twisty, twisty, twisty. Beautiful. It's all very silhouetted at that point. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to creep in. To come back to the picture in a second, I'm going to take some natural green. It's a natural green light, actually. Just a little bit, not too much, just a touch. And very simply, just going to add a little bit of this and twist it in with the trees there, because it just helps to bring it forward a touch. Just a little subtle bit of green there. Again, if you stipple the brush, it's very easy just to add that bit of green. It just helps to bring it forward slightly. Very nice, that works. Now, it's pretty much dry, which is fine. I've cleaned the brush. I'm squeezing the brush through the fingers here. This is the small one, remember? Let's use it as a lift out brush. What? A lift out brush. So we've gone from a sky brush into a blending brush, into a wash brush, into a lift out brush. So you can see how this is very much a universal tool, can't you? Through the fingers. We know where the light is. We've got the edge, it's damp. Stroke it over the picture. That nice crisp edge. Bit of dry kitchen paper. Look at that. It just works, don't it? So very much this set of 2 sky brushes, it's going to be your go-to. It's going to be your go-to brushes because it lifts off, it blends, it paints good skies, it paints nice washes, it lifts out paint. We can really see the lift out here on the castle actually. If we put some highlights coming down here. With that look at that, gorgeous, with that clean edge. Give it a tap. And if you just lightly pull it to one side, it looks more of a curve. So that's a very simple version of Harlech Castle. We can pop a few highlights within the trees as well, just by spotting it. It's quite a stiff bristle as well, so it's a soft bristle, but it's very robust. It's designed to be used and abused. Beautiful. Really effective, folks. Let's just pop a little bit of highlight in this little edge here. Use the edge of it. It becomes a 1/2 inch lift out brush if you want it to be. And it doesn't take no effort at all to do this. Very strong with the grey, very thick with the grey, almost straight from the blob actually. Very definite grey. I just want to use this, the point of the brush. It's back to a pointed brush again, as you can see here. I'm just going to lightly ensure that things are nice and dark along that edge. Now, if we remove the tape, again, you can use the hairdryer, or you can just be very careful. But if you get any seepage coming down the tape, like here, for example, it does happen. It's just one of those things. It's a simple fix. Turn the tape over, reapply it just below the seepage area, press it down, and then when you continue to do the strong grey taps, you can even bring a bit of that green into it if you wanted to, actually. There's no reason not to. Just put little bits of trees and things next to the edge of the sea. I mean, if this was actually looking over Harlech Castle, you'd be stood on a place called Shell Island, which, if you're a keen follower of my video on demand website, Watercolour TV. You've seen me paint there a few times, so it's one of those places that I know really well, and it's looking out over towards Criccieth, Porthmadog, and the famous, the infamous, in fact, Portmeirion, which Portmeirion, of course, is the Italian village in Wales. Yes, that's true. An Italian village in Wales, and it is a stunning place. If you've ever been to Wales, it's got to be on your list, folks. You need to go and see it. It's a stunning place to visit. Just popping a bit of dark here. I'm just going to pop some extra shadows in the castle, give that a bit more oomph. Beautiful. So it's just wanted to give it some kind of landscape. It was important for me to do that. Let's dry it off, take the tape off, and have a look what we've got. Nice and steady. Oh, beautiful, 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 beautiful. What I want to do is put a few ripples in the foreground and a reflection from the moon. So for that, I'm just going to be using, I've got some white paint here that I've squirted on the palette, on some scrap paper even. But first of all, I'm going to use the grey, which I'm going to stipple a little bit so the brush goes a bit spiky. I'm going to use this to put some ripples and a bit of reflection. So I'm sort of using the brush almost like a deer foot, flat to the paper. I'm just adding a few horizontal lines, slightly dry, but where the castle is, we can be a little bit more precise, and where the base of the mountains are. So you can see I'm mixing a much stronger grey here, because I just want to capture a little hint of reflection. I mean, if I'm honest, in the sea, you don't really get reflection of objects necessarily. You get a hint of it. We'll pop some green with that as well, actually, but just on the sides here, just adding a bit extra colour. So you can see it starts to reflect, and it kind of bridges the gap with the darkness. Horizontal lines. I'm using the point of the small brush here. I'm going to take some of the green and just get a hint of green there, because we've got the green coming in. I mean, it doesn't have to be the sea. It could be a loch, you know, it could be a Scottish loch or a tarn or something. It doesn't have to be a seascape. But that's giving us quite a nice effect there. You can see that the sort of sky is reflecting in the water, these objects, the mountains, etc. reflecting. But I just want to put some light in this picture. So I'm just going to give that a few seconds to dry, and then we'll grab some white paint. So white paint, make sure the brush is very clean before we do this. We'll take some white, quite thick. This one is actually natural white here, but you could use white gouache or anything like that. And we're going to press it flat into the white. So you've got that nice kind of brush here, slightly dry. With the white, line it up with the moon, and use the blade part of the brush to add horizontal taps. You can see where we're going with this, can't you? I always think perspective when I do this as well, so just think I want to make it wider as the picture gets lower. So again, you can use that nice blade for many, you can now be quite loose with it and whiz over. If you dry the brush off at this point, actually, really give it a good dry, and through some tissue, you can actually just lightly blend those ends away so they're not too obvious. And it puts that nice little reflection, you can see it there, coming down in the water. It just adds a bit of spit and polish. Love the way of working. Very atmospheric scene. Let's pop this mount on the picture. And there we go. We have a beautiful nighttime. Again, a nice simple watercolour, but really showcasing the power of these beautiful brushes. Look at this gorgeous cloud, the atmosphere, the highlights, all created from that brush. Now let's go back right to a simple sky. I'm sat here now in beautiful Derbyshire in the UK, looking out over a gorgeous blue sky with some little fluffy clouds. I want to paint some little fluffy clouds in a simple blue sky. So for a simple everyday sky, again, we've got a sheet of watercolor paper, quarter imperial, large wash brush, large sky and cloud brush. Wet it 2-3 times. The wetter, the better when it comes to simple skies, okay? Smooth, graduated washes. And because this is a replication of a sable hair, it really does hold a lot of water. So, you know, it's going to be a nice, smooth sky. Now, my advice to you is to pop a very pale, natural yellow or a yellow ochre at the base, very pale. There it is, okay? And what we're going to do here is we're going to bend the brush over, forward, so the brush goes into this nice shape. The writing is going to face to the side, and we're going to twist this pale sandy colour. It really is quite a light colour, very, very pale, nothing too major. Okay, lovely. Then, once that's gone in, we'll come back to the palette, we'll clean the brush, get all that colour out of it as much as we possibly can. And then we'll go for the blue. We're going to go for natural blue here. Again, similar idea, mix it into the brush. Can you see the colour's much stronger? Back to the painting, flat to the paper and twist. Keep loading the brush up. It's the twist that allows you to get a fluffy cloud. Now, when this mixes with the yellow, can you see you get that nice grey coming through, which is really, really nice. Leaving white spaces for clouds. Twist it down. So a bit of a cloudy, overcast sort of sky is what we're going for here. We can use the brush smaller. So making use of the tip of the brush as you work lower down. Perfect. Just got all that juicy colour. Oh, look at that. I love that. That's just a good everyday sky. Now, quite often in a cloudy sky, and in the minute I can see some out the window, we've got grey. So a little bit of grey creeps in. So if we just take a little bit of grey, again, bend the brush forward in the palette. Just going to give it a bit of a tap on tissue this time. So you can see you've got that nice slope to the brush. And we can add the side, almost in a horizontal style, and put some grey at the bottom. All this is done while the paper's wet, hence the reason for lots and lots of water went on first. Okay, let's blend that grey in. We'll clean the brush, my favourite part of the sky. Clean the brush, squeeze it out, get that classic blending shape, and then just lovely go into that grey and just drag it on a slight curve. Can you see the slight curve I'm creating here? Soften it in. Smooth it. Look how you can drag it and it makes the clouds just blend in. So a bit of an overcast style sky, but really effective way of painting effective everyday clouds. Really, really nicely done, really easily done, and it makes such a wonderful effect. Now, if you want to go darker with the grey, of course you can do. You can change for the smaller brush. Make sure that brush is clean. It's still got a bit of white on from the nighttime picture. There we go, better. So if you just want to get any extra little bits of shadow into this, you can just do the twist. So if you want to get a real sort of stormy cloud, even if it's just the one, just creeping in. I think that's probably all I want to do. Actually, I want to do one here as well. Put one here as well. And then again, clean it, squeeze it, and then you can do the blend with the blade. Drag the blade up, make it become part of the picture. There we go. So again, you can see that nice effect of clouds with shadows. Now, quite often when you do a sky like this, if you're not quite happy with how you've got the top pieces of white, you can let this dry, use the small sky and cloud brush and some white paint to apply these. But before I do that, this wants to be dry, and the palette wants to have some white paint. Now, I've got a piece of scrap paper here, natural white, white gouache, white acrylic, something like that, white watercolor. This one is natural white. So I want to use that, but first of all, I'm going to give this a dry. So the brush is just damp. I'm going to pick up that white, it's quite thick on the brush, almost straight from the tube. There it is. And just make sure the brush is a little bit on the dry side. So you've got a dry brush with white paint, and you can basically create a wonderful fluffy cloud effect all by using white paint. Opaque white watercolor is the secret. Squirt it on scrap paper because it just makes more sense, and pick it up, use the side, the blade. Look how effective that is. You want your white to be thick for doing this, and hopefully you've got enough surrounding colour for it to go on. And because of the blade shape of the brush, the sky and cloud brush, it works perfect for creating that illusion of fluffiness. You need to be everywhere, just in enough places for it to stand out clearly, and it just disappears nicely into the white part of the sky. We're talking realistic clouds. It's still using watercolor. This is natural white watercolor. You can sweep it into the grey if you want to, but you can quickly make a feature. You can make a feature of the sky. You can make the sky the focal point, because I know everybody struggles with skies, and it's just one of those things that people have lots of problems with. So using using this effect, it's just gorgeous. It just looks right. It just looks absolutely perfect, and you can spend hours with it. And it's all to do with the fact that the grey went on. Now the white. Now, if you do need to blend any of this in, just get a bit of water, like that's a bit stuck on, so a bit of water, and then you can just lightly feather the bottom away. As long as what's underneath is dry, it won't cause any problems to your picture. So that's brought that cloud forward, and it really has made a stunning feature, and it's made the sky just atmospheric and fluffy and detailed. And the sky, that cloud here especially, with the white on, has made that painting the focus. Now let's paint in probably one of the most famous skies that there is, the Northern Lights, a beautiful light show, but famously a challenging subject to paint. Well, with these new sky and cloud brushes, we can produce wonderful sky effects. Let me show you how to do this. We'll start off with some masking tape, and what we'll do here, we'll take a piece long enough to go across the picture, remove the stickiness, and we'll create a bit of a dip, and then we'll come up here, getting a bit of a mess here. If we can't do this, we can't do a sky, and then we'll curve that around a little bit. So we've created, it's going to be a snowy landscape. Okay, let's get over to the brush then. So we're going to be using the largest of the brushes, at least to start with, and we're simply just going to use water to wet the area. The top area is all I'm interested in at this particular stage. Lots of water, lots and lots of water here, folks. So it's very warm in the studio today because the sun is beating down, and we've got studio lights on as well. So this is going to dry quickly. Now that's had one quick coat of water. Already I'm onto my second coat of water. All the way, this is my third coat. I'm putting more water than what I'd normally put on. Okay, and the reason for that is because I want the paint to move. It's important to work on a tilt, so I want to put the masking tape roll under the top as well. That will give me a greater movement. That's got a lot of water on there. A very large amount of water, actually. Then we're going to go for some yellow. This is natural yellow light. If you've not got this, don't worry. You can use any bright yellow. Load the brush up with the water in the palette. And let's go for this, okay? Just experiment, enjoy. Sweeping up. Popping the yellow on first. Sweep it up, let the paint move down. Don't be afraid to go stronger with the colour. Dig deep with the brush, especially with yellows and oranges. You can really afford to do that. And you can get stronger colours. Now it does zigzag. Just Northern Lights. Let's go back to the palette. No real need to clean the brush here, but we're going to go for some natural orange. We'll put that within the yellow. You could use any orange, just add a bit of red if you want to. Again, working in between. Continuing the zigzag motion all the time, and don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to lift the board up at this point. Let the paint run, let it move on your painting, on your paper. Beautiful, beautiful. Let's go for some violet next. Let's start to go a little bit darker. Natural violet, or any violet, but natural violet is it's more of a blue. It's a beautiful colour. Let's kind of get this at the top. We need some darkness in. working again almost in this sort of zigzag method. We'll also bring some of this coming up from the base as well. That'll help the snowy area stand out. So don't be afraid to go quite strong with the violet. Vivid is the secret here. The vividness. The richness of colour. Now we've got the violet, we've got the orange. What we need to do next is we need to bring in the turquoise. If you've not got natural turquoise, you can use Viridian. And oh, look at that, stunning. Now here, we're going to put the brush, we're going to give the brush a bit of a splay. Oh, look at that, splay those bristles, folks. Splay the bristles. Natural violet. Give it a bit of a tap on tissue. Splay the bristles. Get your fingers into it. Pick the violet up. Get the blade. And what we do is we start to go. And we do the all important part of these. Getting more colour on the brush. Which is the curtain effect. Which it all famously is all about. There's something nice about bringing the turquoise into the skies. And if you notice, I'm following this nice zigzag pattern. And using the brush quite fine with the violet. Just give your brush a bit of a splay. Encourage the paint to move. Beautiful. Ain't it a beauty? It's something different. Something different. Get those fingers into that brush. Get the long lines. Get the movement. Get the brush moving. Keep it flowing. It's almost like the same way you'd paint rain. But then we need to go darker. Yes, we do. We need to go darker. So we're going to rinse the brush out, make sure it's not too wet. And we're going to take some grey. We're going to go grey. We're going to go strong grey. Quite heavy with the grey. Quite thick. A little bit of turquoise if you want to, or you just use it on its own. Again, get that brush. If you give it a bit of a tap on tissue and get the brush a bit spiky, you can have some fun with this. Remember that I put a lot of water on this. We're going to go darker at the top. You get a darker edge across the top of the Northern Lights. And if we've got the tissue at hand, we can make the brush go spiky. Just like we did with the grey, the turquoise. It sort of follows a zigzag style. But you can see just by looking at the palette how strong that grey is, and don't be afraid to use it strong and get your fingers into that brush. It will stay in shape for a while. Unless your brush is really wet, then it won't stay in shape. And just do a little tiny, almost like a dark edge, but don't be afraid of the dark. And also bear in mind that when you paint a picture like this, it does take a while for it to dry. And as it dries, the colour changes 30–40%. It does massively change. So allow it to change. And we have Northern Lights. Isn't that good? So addictive, creating that. Now that needs time to dry. We'll give it time to dry. We'll come back to it. We'll paint in some landscape, but that was great fun. Let's come back in a minute. It's nice and dry. We're going to paint in some pine trees and some distant landscape at this point. So we'll get to the palette, and we're just going to use grey for this, actually. So it'll be nice and straightforward from this point on. We've got the grey, and we're going to use the small cloud brush, making use of the flat edge. So if you sort of press your brush a little bit to one side, it splays the bristles, makes the brush go sharp. We can utilize that, we can make use of that and paint some distance in place. Now we'll start off by putting in lots of vertical lines around here. I love the turquoise, it just looks magical. Bring it over. You can be as thin as you like here with these. Getting right down to that masking tape, it's going to give us a clean edge. And what we'll actually do here is we'll create some mist. So if you try and get some fine lines at the tops of these, you can pop in a few outward classic sort of pine trees every so often. Standalone lines. You can see how easy it is to make use of the pointy properties of the brush. And we'll mist this off in a second, so I'm just going to pop in a few extra areas of lines. See what difference it makes. So it's that mass, but then you introduce in, I love that sky, it's so effective. And then it's just bringing in some random areas of pine trees. We'll clean the brush. We'll wipe it almost dry, and then we'll scrub the ends away. So we're blending it away. So it's a soft bristle, but it's also quite aggressive. With it being a imitation sable, you've got that property of the brush that allows it to be quite soft. So you can see I've blended it away. So you've got that sort of misty atmospheric thing going off. What we'll do then is we'll give that a few seconds to sort of dry off a little bit. Just going to pop in a few extra little bits of trees creeping out the top of there. I'm sure you know I do love my pine trees. I'm quite a fan of them. Painted, I must have painted that tens of thousands over the years, but quite an effective way of adding interest and mist. Yeah, so we'll give that a dry, and then we'll put some darker trees here, and then we'll paint some wintry, snowy landscape at the bottom. Beautiful. I love that mist and atmosphere. It really does come across nice. So let's go stronger with the colour. Again, natural grey. It's always good to be nice and fresh with the grey, so we'll get a good squirt from the tube there. All the colours are available on Watercolour TV if you've not got any of them. And you like them, you can pick them up. So natural grey is a mixture of primary colours. So let's go stronger with the paint. Again, I'm just going to push a little bit of a bend, and it just kind of makes this tip a little bit finer to work with. Brilliant. Okay, I don't want too many tall ones, but we're just going to paint in a few taller ones here. I'm going to be a little bit more creative with the way we do these, but you can see instantly the colour is stronger. We'll put some snow on these as well. Show you how to do that. Nice. How cool is that? Don't be afraid to use the colour strong and just sort of tap the brush on the edge, literally using that blade part of it again, which is really effective. Let's have one here as well. You can have as many as you like of these. It's up to you, really. Your call. It's your picture. You can always say that. You can do what you want, can't you? And you sort of rock the brush, baby, rock the brush from side to side to create a nice illusion of those beautiful spruce blue noose pines. I don't know what they are. Make it a little bit dark. Let's put some smaller ones here as well. It's a good idea to fill all the area so we can have some smaller ones coming in. There we go. I like that. It just creates depth, instant depth. You can give it another coat of colour if you want to. Again, the secret is all to do with the grey. If you sort of do the brush forward and back as you put your colour up, it makes the brush go flat, which makes it easier to work with. Don't be afraid to be quite strong with your colour. Loving the sky. We'll take a look back at the whole picture very soon. Let's do some trees over here. We'll have a couple taller one here. And we'll rock the brush. So hold the brush with the writing facing towards you when you do this. And it makes a lovely effect of quick and simple pine trees. So it's amazing what you can do with just a couple of brushes. You don't need all the hundreds of brushes, just a couple of sky and cloud brushes, and you can produce, if you're new to painting, you know, it just makes everything easier for you. Now, you might notice as I'm doing this that the colour is starting to get a little bit dry, so I need to just simply add a little bit of water, because obviously the water evaporates, leaving the pigment behind. So it's quite common just to bring in a little, went in the wrong colour then. It's quite common to bring in a bit of extra paint every so often. You'll always see me do that, by the way, wipe the brush on the side of the palette. It's a good little tip, that. Pop some in the middle. That one just the top, obviously. Well, and then we'll do some smaller ones running around the side. Quite addictive. Enjoy it. Enjoy the process. You can really get a fine line out of these brushes. Because of the design style of them. Pop a little bit more randomly around there. There we go. So we've got a lovely, interesting look to that. Make that one quite tall, I think. Brilliant, isn't it? Okay, take away gently. You can use a hairdryer or a heat gun to do that. I wouldn't worry about seepage here. I'm now going to use the large Sky and Cloud brush, nice and clean. Giving it a good rinse around as I'm talking. Violet. We're going to use natural violet or any kind of violet to put some shadows in the snow. This really showcases how nice the brushes allow you to blend paint. So you can really get some lovely blending effects on this one. If you've got a dip in the middle, which I've got here, we can continue from that dip. Bring it up. Also pop some of this violet in the corner. Clean the brush really, really well. Because it's a synthetic natural hair, it does take a lot of cleaning. It holds a lot of paint, which is what you want a brush to do. But using the blade to blend makes the blending process easier. This is kind of 3 brushes in one. 4 brushes in one. It's a sky brush, it's a wash brush, it's a blending blade, it's also a lift out brush as well. But that is such an effortless thing to do there. Look, I have created a sort of misty kind of valley, if you like. I'm tempted to be a little bit darker with the violet, just a little bit darker in this corner here. I just feel it could be a little bit stronger there, that's all. Just to, and then get a bit of water to smooth it in. Violet's beautiful for snow. It's just the perfect colour. Excellent, and then we'll pick up the smaller brush and the violet a little bit more. And I'm just going to pop in a few almost lines coming over the hillside to loosely represent the shadows of those trees. It's not going to be precise, just a little bit. It just helps to give a bit of shadows of the lights kind of coming from behind, which of course it is in the Northern Lights. Okay, so you can see here I've just added a bit of a, so I've just picked up the violet and you can see I'm just adding some lines that are sort of coming out away from those trees, almost following the hillside with the smaller brush, as though the light's coming from behind, which it would be of course in the Northern Lights. Beautiful. Popping a bit extra darkness in. Okay, I'm going to give that a few moments to dry. We'll come back to it and put the finishing touches on. Got a craft knife here, quite a sharp knife at that. I'm going to use it to actually scratch off some paint in the trees. Don't want much, just a little bit. It'll just help to give that little impression of a bit of settled snow on there. And you could always pop a few little bits and bobs in this background as well, just so there's a bit of texture in there, but it doesn't want much, to be fair. I wouldn't really do much there at all. But certainly on these dark, almost silhouetted pine trees, it's quite effective. Using the small brush, we're going to take the grey. I'm just going to mix it with a bit of some kind of a brown, so I've got some natural brown here. Look, that'll do the job. And dry it off and make the brush go splayed. Splay the bristle. Use it like a dry brush. And I just want to pop a little bit of earth on the edge. Very dry. So imagine there's just a few little bits of earth just creeping through there. You know, little bits of dirty snow, if that's the right way to describe it. I think you know what I'm saying. Texture. This is why this watercolour paper, this is a not surface paper, this, which is a middle grain surface, so it's just NOT when I say not. So there's smooth paper, there's not, which is what this one is, and then there's a rough surface. But for some reason this is called not, which basically means it's not rough and it's not smooth in a basic nutshell. Pop a little bit of this dry brush down here as well. It just helps to give a bit of interest to the picture. Because it's quite a pointy brush as well, you could always add a few little tufts of grass just poking out the snow in this corner here. That helps to lift it up. Bit of foliage. And then if I clean the brush one more time and get some of the violet, we can actually pop a shadow from the base of the grass, which will just help to make it look. So you've got a little bit of an extra shadow just casting across. Put the mount on, and again a wonderful Northern Lights watercolour painted with the Matthew Palmer Sky and Cloud brushes. Thank you for watching. My name is Matthew Palmer. I hope you enjoyed that little lesson there. 4 different skies: the sunset, the nighttime scene, of course the beautiful blue sky with the fluffy clouds, and the Northern Lights. Thank you for watching. The Sky and Cloud brushes are now available on Watercolour TV. Check them out, folks, and I'll see you soon for more watercolour action. Take care.